Chapter 9. The Stability Others Notice. Emotional steadiness is often misunderstood as a private accomplishment. People imagine it as something you cultivate for yourself, an internal cleanliness that makes your own days less chaotic. That is true, but it is not the first thing it changes. The first change is external, even when you say nothing about it. Others begin to experience you differently. They may not be able to name what is different. They might describe you as calm, reliable, or grounded. They might say you have good judgment. They might feel that conversations with you land more cleanly, that meetings with you leave fewer loose ends, that pressure does not make you unpredictable. They may simply find themselves wanting your presence nearby when things are unclear. None of this requires a title. It does not even require deliberate leadership. It happens because steadiness is rare, and the rare qualities in any environment become visible quickly. Most workplaces are not defined by the complexity of tasks as much as by the volatility of human reaction. A process breaks and people scramble. A deadline shifts and tone hardens. A mistake is discovered and blame begins searching for a home. An ambiguous email arrives and half a day is spent interpreting it. The work itself might be solvable, but the emotional turbulence around the work makes everything heavier. It creates noise where there should be signal. In that kind of environment, someone who remains steady feels almost like a structural element. Steadiness does not mean passivity. It does not mean being agreeable or soft. It means not being thrown. It means the internal weather does not immediately become a public event. It means the person stays oriented to what is real, what is required, and what can be done next, even while others are reacting to what they fear, what they assume, or what they feel. This orientation has consequences. It changes the emotional field around you, because emotion is contagious, and so is composure. When someone becomes anxious, they begin broadcasting urgency. They speak faster, they interrupt more, they ask questions that are really attempts to reduce their own discomfort. They pull others into the narrowing. People begin acting as if the anxiety is the truth of the situation rather than one person's internal state. A steady person interrupts that spread without needing to confront it directly. They slow the tempo. They ask a clarifying question instead of amplifying the panic. They separate what is known from what is assumed. They keep the conversation inside reality. Others feel the difference immediately, even if they cannot explain why. This is why emotional steadiness often functions as leadership before it becomes recognized as a skill. Leadership is commonly confused with direction giving, with charisma, with bold decisions. Those things can matter, but they are secondary. In most real situations, leadership begins as regulation. It is the ability to keep the environment from turning into a storm. It is the ability to remain a stable reference point so others can regain their own orientation. People do not follow the loudest person when they're stressed. They follow the person who makes the situation feel navigable. Navigable does not mean easy. It means clear enough to move through. A steady person does not necessarily reduce difficulty, but they reduce distortion. They prevent the work from being swallowed by narrative. They prevent emotion from becoming policy. They hold the line between the problem and the panic about the problem, and that line is often the difference between a team responding intelligently and a team wasting days on reactive churn. This kind of steadiness is noticed in subtle ways. Someone brings you a problem and they find themselves speaking more plainly than they intended. They drop the dramatic framing. They begin telling you what actually happened. They may start defensive and then soften, not because you placated them, but because you did not mirror their escalation. Your presence quietly signals that the problem can be discussed without turning into a crisis of identity. It is difficult to overstate how valuable this becomes over time. A steady person is easier to coordinate with because they are predictable. Predictability sounds boring, but in work, it is a form of trust. If others cannot predict your emotional response, they begin managing you instead of managing the work. They edit themselves, they delay conversations, they avoid raising issues until the issues become larger.
In these environments, work becomes an elaborate dance around moods. The most capable people often spend their energy not on execution, but on emotional risk management. When you are steady, people stop doing that around you. They begin bringing the real information earlier. They speak more directly. They ask for decisions instead of trying to anticipate your reaction. This is how steadiness increases efficiency without any formal process change. It reduces the hidden friction of interpersonal anticipation. It reduces the amount of time spent rehearsing conversations and crafting messages designed to not trigger someone's temperament. The effect is not merely interpersonal, it changes the quality of decisions. Emotional volatility distorts decision-making because it changes what seems urgent. Under pressure, people become biased toward short-term relief. They choose whatever makes the discomfort decrease fastest, even if it creates long-term cost. They overcorrect. They reverse decisions abruptly. They impose rigid controls where flexibility is needed, then later loosen controls when the consequences appear. The system swings because the decision-making is tethered to emotion rather than reality. A steady person tends to decide with a longer horizon, not because they are more moral or more patient, but because their awareness remains wider. They can hold trade-offs without collapsing them into a simple story. They can tolerate the discomfort of not solving everything immediately. They can say with calm precision what is required now, what can wait, and what is genuinely unknown. That precision becomes stabilizing for everyone around them because it reduces the need for frantic interpretation. It also creates a reputation that spreads without marketing. In any group, people talk quietly about who is safe to bring problems to. Safe does not mean gentle. It means the person will not make the situation worse. It means the person can be trusted not to explode, not to spiral, not to make it about themselves. It means the person will stay with the problem long enough to see it clearly. Over time, this becomes its own form of authority. People begin seeking your input not because you demand it, but because your steadiness has proven useful. Authority in this sense is not earned through performance, it is earned through the absence of turbulence. There is a particular kind of credibility that comes from being unchanged by stress. It is not the credibility of someone who never feels stress. It is the credibility of someone who does not broadcast it as disorder. Many people confuse broadcasting with honesty, as if the only way to be authentic is to let the internal atmosphere spill outward. In work, authenticity is less about expression and more about alignment. A steady person is often more honest than a volatile one because they are less theatrical. They don't need to inflate their feelings to feel justified. They can describe reality without dramatizing it. This becomes especially visible in conflict. In most conflicts, the content is not the problem. The problem is escalation. Tone becomes the real battlefield. People stop listening because they're defending. They begin interpreting every sentence as an attack. They lose sight of what they actually want because the nervous system has taken over. The steady person does not necessarily resolve conflict, but they tend to stop it from metastasizing. They stay with the content. They refuse to let the conflict become a performance of dominance or humiliation. They keep the conversation at the level where it can still produce a decision. Others notice this restraint and interpret it as strength because it is. Restraint is a form of power that does not announce itself. It is power over reaction, power over the urge to win emotionally in the moment at the cost of long-term trust. It is the ability to let a provocative comment pass by without immediately returning fire. It is the ability to ask for clarity when someone is being vague rather than assuming malice. It is the ability to hold your own posture when someone else is trying, consciously or not, to pull you into their turbulence. In environments where people are used to emotional games, this steadiness can feel disarming. Sometimes it is met with suspicion at first. People may test it. They may escalate to see if you will react. They may interpret your calm as coldness, your restraint as superiority. This is a predictable response in groups where emotional volatility has become normal.
If everyone is used to emotion as communication, someone who does not use emotion that way can seem unnatural. Over time, if the steadiness holds, suspicion often shifts into respect, because respect is what people give to reliability when they are tired of managing instability. This is how emotional steadiness becomes leadership, even in those who do not seek leadership. The steady worker also changes what meetings feel like. Many meetings are not about decisions, they are about emotional distribution. People arrive carrying anxiety and try to offload it by talking. They arrive carrying frustration and try to convert it into agreement. They arrive carrying uncertainty and try to hide it behind certainty. The result is often a noisy conversation that produces little clarity. A steady presence alters this dynamic by lowering the emotional temperature. When someone is not competing in the emotional exchange, the room has less fuel. People begin speaking more specifically because generalities are harder to maintain in the presence of calm scrutiny. Calm scrutiny is another underappreciated form of leadership. It is not hostile, it is simply uninterested in noise. It asks, without aggression, what is actually happening. It refuses to let emotions become facts. It does not dismiss feelings, but it does not allow feelings to become the structure of the conversation. In the presence of this, the group either sharpens or becomes uncomfortable. Either outcome reveals something about the environment, and a clear worker learns to tolerate that discomfort without needing to resolve it by becoming louder. The stability others notice is often the stability you stop needing to prove. When emotion is no longer dictating behavior, a person no longer needs to manage their image through performance. They do not need to appear confident by speaking constantly. They do not need to appear decisive by rushing. They do not need to appear strong by being unmoved. Their steadiness becomes simple. They show up, they engage, they respond proportionately. They do not inflate the day into drama or reduce it into avoidance. They meet what is in front of them. That proportionality is what people feel. They feel that you are not hijacked by the moment. They feel that you can be trusted to stay in contact even when things are uncomfortable. They feel that you are not going to disappear into self-protection. This creates an unusual kind of interpersonal relief. People can disagree with you and still feel safe because disagreement does not automatically become a threat to your identity. They can bring bad news without fearing punishment. They can admit uncertainty without being shamed. These are not soft qualities, they are operational qualities. They determine how quickly a team learns, how honestly it communicates, how effectively it corrects course. Over time, this makes you a stabilizing node in the system. Systems naturally orient around stability. In a chaotic environment, people will cluster near whoever makes chaos feel less powerful. This clustering can become responsibility. You may find that people bring you more issues. You may find that others seek your approval. You may find yourself becoming an anchor, sometimes without wanting to. This is one reason emotional steadiness must be paired with clarity of boundaries. Stability attracts load. If you do not manage that load, you will become a sponge for the system's anxiety. The clear worker does not become a dumping ground, they become a reference point. A reference point is valuable because it does not get pulled into the current. The transformation described in this part of the book is not about becoming admired. Admiration is unreliable and often irrelevant. The transformation is that when emotion stops dictating behavior, the person becomes easier to build with. They become a platform others can rely on, and reliance is one of the earliest signs that leadership is already occurring. It may not be formal, it may not be celebrated, it will be noticed. And it will change the kinds of work that become possible around you. When a person is stable, the environment begins to attempt larger things. Not because the person is a hero, but because instability is the hidden tax that prevents ambitious work. Projects fail less from lack of intelligence than from reactive pivots, unspoken resentments, miscommunication under pressure, the constant hemorrhaging of attention into conflict and narrative. Stability reduces that tax. It keeps the group oriented to reality. It makes continuity possible. People do not always know why they trust a steady person, but they do. They feel the absence of performance. They feel the lack of manipulation. They feel that you are not trying to win the moment emotionally.
They feel that you can tolerate discomfort without making it everyone's problem. In a world where so much work is entangled with ego and mood, this becomes a form of leadership that arrives before any credential and often outlasts it.